Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this panel discussion titled Shaping Resilience, Investing in Women as a Global Economic Imperative, moderated by Rebecca McLaughlin Eastham, independent TV anchor and CEO, RME Media. Our panelists are Her Excellency Dr. Hala bint Mazyad Al-Tuwaijri, President of Human Rights Commission, Saudi Arabia; Jem O'Connor, Chairman and CEO, United States Telecommunications Training Institute; Sarah E. Hendriks, Deputy Executive Director, UN Women.
Nice to see you, Sarah. Please. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends of GCF, thank you for being here. And to my esteemed guests, it's wonderful to see you all again. Nice to see you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Nice
How
to
are
see you
you
again.
today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Good to see you.
Met
Thank
back
you
in
very
New York last time I saw you. All is well?
All is well. Have been here since Thursday. It's been wonderful to be back here in Riyadh and to be with our the GCF.
You're very welcome. And Sarah, first time in Saudi Arabia, first time in Riyadh.
Indeed, thrilled to be here, Rebecca, and to join Her Excellency and Jim in this important conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very important topic to discuss. As you can see, it's about shaping resilience, investing in women. It is a global imperative, not least when it comes to cybersecurity, because as we know, around 72% of cybersecurity jobs are filled to date. Should be 100, but it's not. And of those jobs, around 24% are held by women. We can do better. We are doing better year on year. But what are the accelerators to get us where we need to be? We will discuss everything from policy to mentoring to training programs that Jim is so involved with on the ground here and in partnership with GCF. But let's jump straight into the topic. Your Excellency, talk to me about the big picture, the risks that you see at this stage by not including women at the highest level, but also at grassroots when it comes to cybersecurity.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. And let us start identifying what is cybersecurity and what's cyberspace. So it's another form of a public sphere where there is plenty of room for development, plenty of room for the contribution of everybody. And I think we've come a long way to assert the notion that when women are actively engaged and involved in any sector, developmental sector, that this sector prospers and this sector becomes more inclusive, addresses the needs of all and all of that. So like any other sector, this sector needs to learn from lessons of the past, since it's an emerging sector, that from the outset, we have to acknowledge that the participation of women, it's not just for the sake of including women only, also for the sake of the growth and prosperity of the sector, and also for its safety. We've also, I'm sure you here are with us, and they can give you more numbers and statistics about the inclusion of women and its effect on all sectors. But also, if we look at it from the angle of women's financial economic contribution, we have a great amount of talent among women, especially in this area. In Saudi Arabia, for example, we've seen that more women are studying STEM in general, and nowadays even subjects related to technology and cybersecurity and all of that. We want to guarantee that there is a pipeline between graduates of these fields and the private or public sector, and that they have an access, they have an opportunity. And to do that, we will follow the same structure, the same policies that we've used for women empowerment in general, but also we need to address certain facts. And that was actually the main cause why Saudi Arabia, under the leadership of His Royal Highness, specifically in this topic, thought that we need a global initiative to empower women, because the cyberspace unlike any other space, is not controlled by borders. It's an open space. And I walk into my son's room and he's playing with his friend from South Korea. And they are communicating somehow, which means that we need to have an open mind about this, this new era, and also learn from lessons of the past, but also address new issues, new challenges to the sector.
Absolutely. Encouraging and constantly evolving. Jim, let me come to you and pick up on what Her Excellency said, because education is going to play a pivotal role in our discussion, as it always does. But you've been on the ground here in Saudi since last week, and indeed have been driving training programs here, and probably some of the recipients of your wise words are in the room. We have about 20 ladies from 20 countries who've been involved with the training. If you're in the room, would you raise your hand, make yourselves known? Hello. Lovely to see you, very proudly. A round of applause, absolutely, ladies and gentlemen. Jim, take us behind the scenes, take us into those rooms, and tell us exactly what's being discussed.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Your Excellency, you raise a very good point. You know, the cyber threat is borderless, it's nameless, it's faceless. And so as we come into the training rooms and we talk about different experiences, what keeps recurring as we think about cybersecurity is, how do we reduce our vulnerabilities? How do we reduce our risks? And so as we think about those vulnerabilities and we think about those risks, the recurring theme that comes up is, if we don't have women as part of the discussion, as part of the workforce looking to identify threats, we open ourselves to a significant blind spot. That without having women in the workforce, without having them there, we are missing the opportunity to identify where our vulnerabilities and risks are. And every day as we, you know, open the news and we read and we see about different hacks, John talked this morning about being at Heathrow and how the transportation sector and the airlines were crippled there. I kept asking myself, how many women were on those cyber teams that were looking to identify the threats? And if we had more women who were involved, who were working there, could there have been something that we saw? Was there a way that we could have addressed these risks to prevent what these attacks are? And I think the women who we have been training as part of the Empowering Women to Leadership in Cybersecurity program that we're conducting in collaboration with the GCF, these women are there. They are in the CERTs, they're in the network operation centers, and they are lending their perspectives to these threats and issues that are coming their way. And what our hope is that we continue to magnify their voices, that we recognize them, and we allow them and the other women who they're going to empower to help fight these issues and make cyberspace more secure.
Thank you. Sarah, nodding away vehemently. We're dying to get the view of the UN on this. And we were speaking backstage, of course, about a recurrent phrase that we hear, you can be what you can see. I had the privilege of sitting down with Silvana Koch-Marin, a friend of GCF who's graced this stage before, and with women political leaders, it's the same thing. Do we have representation on stage, in the parliaments, in the boardroom, for younger women to be inspired by? Because surely that has to do with getting more women into the cyberspace.
Absolutely, Rebecca. I think you've said it precisely, that when women see themselves represented in the cybersecurity sector, then they too seek to join that sector. And of course, cybersecurity is only as safe as it is inclusive.
Yeah.
And right now, the imperative is to ensure that the workforce is not missing the innovation, the talent that women bring. 24% of the workforce has indeed been significant gains over the last number of years, but we're not there yet in terms of parity. And so consequently, strategic choices are needed Leadership accountability is needed in order to both disrupt the sector and ensure that it is a sector that is embracing as well as safe for women's participation and women's leadership in ways.
I want to pick up on that because accountability at leadership level is an interesting one. I imagine it's a bit of a tricky topic. How receptive are private firms to the idea of it, number one, and how does it work in theory and practice? How do you make leaders accountable and also encourage them to get more women onto their boards?
You know, I think this is a whole of society effort that's required, including, of course, with the private sector. The private sector, I think, requires clear targets as well as systems and strategies to ensure that there is an effective pipeline. But the pipeline isn't the only answer. It is essential, but also insufficient. What is necessary is to ensure that there is institutional strengthening and institutional accountability. And we need to start young. We need to ensure that gender stereotypes are broken at the earliest ages of education so that young girls see them as an optional and a vital opportunity. We need to break bias in hiring systems. And we need to ensure that women are retained in the cybersecurity workforce, that they don't exit the workforce midstream, but that they see the workforce as one that is safe for them, that there is zero tolerance for sexual harassment. We need to ensure that there's more mentorship and sponsorship of women to take on leadership roles in cybersecurity. And also, we need governments to play their part. This is, of course, a critical issue for government policy. We did an analysis of 126 governments over the last year, and only 11% of cybersecurity strategies named women at all, or gender equality. That too needs to change.
It's quite shocking, isn't it? Sorry, Jim, you wanted to come in.
And I think that, you know, as part of the training and being here in Riyadh and conducting classroom sessions, but also making site visits, we've seen these strategies in play, right? And so what are the strategies, you know, that we talk about specifically, you know, promoting and prioritizing at the highest level, as you're saying, leadership to say, we want to bring more women into the workforce, raising awareness as we're doing this discussion, and then providing resources to make it happen. Yesterday, we took a cohort of trainees to SABIC, a petrochemicals company here in the kingdom. Now, when you think of SABIC, you don't initially and immediately think, oh, this is a cybersecurity company. But really, every company, every organization is a cybersecurity company or organization. And what we saw during our visit to SABIC are those three pillars of the strategies being implemented and being lived out. And the result is that 55% of their cyber workforce are women, because they've had leadership at the highest level as part of their entire corporate strategy. They've raised awareness by reaching out to universities and recruiting women in to the workforce, providing 2-year mentorship programs for them. And they've also committed resources. They've provided scholarships for women to go and to pursue their master's degree in cybersecurity. And then another very important part of that in terms of the resource, not just creating the on-ramps, but then how do we retain women in the cybersecurity workforce? And what we saw yesterday, you know, supports this, you know, strategy that works for this. Equal pay, providing a supportive culture, providing mentorship from other women, but also men in the organization who can speak to the career path that's there. So I think having that leadership, and it's, you know, important for us to note that that's happening here in the kingdom, where there has been leadership at the highest levels, from the king and the crown prince to the National Cybersecurity Authority and the strategies that are there. So making all of those work allow and incentivize the private sector to then provide, you know, these opportunities for women to fill these gaps and jobs that are there in the workforce.
It's incredible, isn't it, when you look at an industry titan, a national champion like Sabec, having almost half its workforce, and nearly 45%, you say, of the cyber roles filled by women, leading the charge. A lot of international companies fall very short of that. What strategies, in your opinion, Dr. Hala, including some of the ones that we've mentioned, I imagine, from mentorship, incentives to internships, really help us get to where we need to be with retention, but also encouraging women in the first place into the sector?
Yeah, so amen to everything that has been said, because these are generally the strategies to have more inclusion of women in any sector, specifically this one. But also I would like to add to it that we've discovered that the recruitment is a weak link. You know, having the HR in every company not paying attention to, let's say, unintended bias and asking certain questions to only women that they don't ask to men. This also adds to training opportunities and all of that are, you know, kind of taken away as opportunities from women for some biological reasons, for example, getting pregnant or whatever. So that also we discovered is a weak link, and it's one that needs to be addressed. And that's why, among everything else, like having a national target to empower women, or directing all the government agencies to have women empowerment as a strategic objective. But also, we've developed a national policy for non-discrimination in all phases of employment. And one of them is the recruitment phase, because the HR play a great role in how women enter any sector, and also how do they progress in that sector.
And if they stay. How do we eradicate that bias? Not as easy, I imagine, as just a training course or it happening in 3 to 6 months, for example. What are the best ways? And Jim, you can add your point of view on this as a training expert, but what would you say when it comes to stamping out bias? Communication, education obviously plays its part, but what else do we need to do?
Well, I think, again, a very large part of this is recognizing that there is, and recognize that this is something and this is a challenge that we do want to try and conquer, that we do want to bring more women into the workforce, because it makes us more secure, it provides more economic prosperity. I think as part of that, and again, this idea of we cannot be what we cannot see, we also have to make sure that our efforts to recruit women, in doing that, we're meeting them where they are, right? We're dedicating resources to do that, but are the messages getting to women? Are we, you know, going to the podcasts that they listen to? Are we advertising and showing other women, you know, in the social media feeds that they follow, in the YouTube videos that they watch? I think the more that we can do that, the more that we can show that this emerging sector, that good paying jobs are there and they are available, and that it's cross-sectoral. You know, cybersecurity brings in and gives the opportunity to women who have many different talents. It is not just those who, you know, sit in the cold rooms and type in the ones and zeros. It is multifaceted, and so there are many different perspectives that women can bring to help close that gap and build to the awareness raising and be role models for other women in the sector.
Sarah, it was about some of the statistics and the research that you have at UN Women that pertains to our discussion, and how optimistic are you for the year ahead? How will our conversation hopefully have moved forward and progress continue to be made in the next 12 months when it comes to women's inclusion in cybersecurity?
So we are seeing significant progress. 10% only in the year 2012 of the workforce were women. Now it's 24%. That's something to be celebrated, and yet more needs to be done. And here, what encourages me is some of the data that UN Women, together with UN DESA, have brought out in our recent SDG Gender Snapshot report. And it shows that right now, women are actually outpacing men with postgraduate degrees in cybersecurity. This is good news. It's 52% for women versus 44% for men. When you unpack that research and look at the skills that women are disproportionately bringing to this sector, that too is a good news story. Women are bringing disproportionate skills in human-centered design, strong risk assessment, as well as systems thinking. All the types of skills that are so key for resilient digital systems. We also see, however, that there is, I think, an encouraging economic imperative. And so we see this not just as a diversity issue itself, that we need to add women because of a workforce gap. But in fact, there is an economic imperative and a strategic imperative as well. Countries that invest in digital skills for women have stronger economies. They have greater competitiveness. They have, I think they're more attractive to investment as well. And so those incentives should be there to move that large cohort of women with postgraduate degrees into the sector. But it requires determination. It requires political will. It requires very clear targets as well as accountability to those targets. And there, I think, there's a role for everyone to play.
The economic uplift is very interesting, isn't it, when you look at inclusion? Maybe not obvious to everyone either, but in terms of how collaboration can help that along, what is your level of optimism looking at the 12 months ahead until we meet again at GCF? Collaboration, more women included in the workforce when it comes to cybersecurity, but also that continued boost, the economic uplift that we're talking about.
We're always optimistic, as you know. But actually, as I said, because this topic specifically is more of a borderless issue, I don't think any country can progress in any of these fields related to cybersecurity, whether it's the protection of children or the empowerment of women or of the safety of people online and all of that, without collaboration. So having an international initiative is key to that, but also bringing in expertise from all of the world countries is also very key. And let's not forget that this is, yes, sounds like an economic or a digital issue, but actually it is the issue of each and every household. Every one of us is worried about the safety of their children online. Each one of us is concerned about how is this, cyberspace taking over what we are accustomed to. So that is an area that we need to venture in. And I would like just to add an issue about policies and strategies of women, just a tiny one, is that we also need to address sometimes issues created by women. So, what we call the imposter syndrome.
At that point.
So sometimes women doubt themselves, or sometimes women give in to circumstances. This also needs to be addressed. Training is a great part of it.
Yeah, and something that on that topic that has been interesting that has come up in our leadership sessions with the women who have participated is that sometimes the greatest challenge they have to advancement are other women.
Correct.
Who are standing in their way, who aren't, providing that mentorship, who aren't providing, those opportunities there. So, right?
Or society and culture pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
We cannot deny the fact that when women are building their careers, that's also the age where they give birth to children, that they have little babies. So it doesn't have the same path as men have, but we need to understand that and address it and come up with initiatives that actually acknowledge this difference between the two sexes.
Yes.
I couldn't agree more.
It's a mindset shift, isn't it, as we were referencing earlier, not least with HR, but in terms of women not coming back into the workforce, is there anything that you see changing in that regard? I mean, we can be as supportive and encouraging and incentivizing as we may, but maybe it's just a personal choice. Maybe it is a societal trend, a pattern that we followed for so long.
I think we are seeing workplaces that are taking more intent to design around women's lived realities, as Dr. Hala has said. So to design around the fact that women also are carrying a large share of paid care and domestic work in the household. Data says that women are carrying up to 2 to 3 hours more than their male counterparts on a daily basis. This changes, of course, across regions, across countries. But it is also about ensuring that the workplace is somewhere that feels safe for women. And so I'll come back to the point of zero tolerance for sexual harassment of any kind in the work. And it's about ensuring that women at work are seeing pathways towards leadership. That there and they see that there is an opportunity for their voice, for their agency, for their empowerment, their skills and capabilities to be recognized, to be effectively and equally remunerated, but also to be celebrated. And requires, I think, workplaces that are really designing for women's needs, but with women's opportunities and retention in mind.
Jim, closing word for the ladies in the audience and those who may be joining the training schemes in the years ahead. What is the greatest fear that they have, the greatest concern, the greatest number of questions that you get on a certain topic from these ladies, and also what is their greatest hope for the coming years?
So I'll start with the worries and concerns. And I think that one of the things that comes up is that we have good momentum, as you mentioned, over the last 15 years in addressing this issue. And I think one of the fears and worries and concerns is that we lose that momentum, that this no longer continues to be a priority, that workplaces aren't prioritizing retaining the women who we bring in. But I think the hope comes from, and Your Excellency, you mentioned, it's borderless, but the threats are nameless and faceless as well. But I think that what we've seen in the women that we've brought together is this idea of collaboration. And that in working together, we have the names, we know the faces, and we can collaborate together across borders. That's what gives them hope, that's what gives us hope, and that's also why it's so exciting to be here, convened with the GCF, with stakeholders from different sectors, from academia, that can all, government, private sector, civil society, that can work together to really continue to bring this forward and continue to address this issue.
Perfect note to end our conversation on collaboration right across borders. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to close our thoughts there, but thank you so much for joining me today. Please join me in thanking my fantastic panelists for their thoughts.